Hey there, we're now going to learn how to play against a fairly rare opening that black may play, which is the Owens defense. That will reach after we play e4 and black plays b6. So b6, similar to the modern defense, where black plays g6, has the idea to fianchetto the bishop and put pressure on the center indirectly. But its main drawback is that it allows us to dominate the center with d4. And additionally, since in this case black is delaying the kingside development, it will become harder for black or will take more time for black to castle later. That's probably one of the reasons why this opening is played less often than the modern defense. So after bishop to b7, here we're going to defend the pawn. We want to keep this very strong center. And we're going to play the move knight to c3. Bishop to d3 is another way to defend the pawn. But we're going to play the move knight to c3, holding the pawn. And here black will normally continue with e6, planning to develop the bishop. If black plays a move like g6, trying to fianchetto, then here we could even play the move bishop to e3, playing in similar fashion as we did against the periods or the modern, where we played queen to d2 and then we tried to castle long. But e6 also has an idea to go bishop to b4, pinning the knight and putting more pressure on the center. So black's main idea will be to counterattack on the center, otherwise we're gonna get an advantage. And here we have many possible moves, but I suggest to play against black's plan and play the move a3, preventing bishop to b4. And this move has also been scoring fairly well, that's why I like it. And here black will normally play knight to f6, increasing the pressure against e4. Or black might try counterattacking on the center straight away. So let's check those ideas first. Here playing d5 is an option, but here we can take on d5. And if black captures with the bishop, then after knight takes, the position is fairly open and we get the bishop pair. That's why here we get, at the very least, a slight advantage. And if black captures with the e-pawn, then committing the bishop to b7 here is probably not the best for black because the bishop is not doing a lot here. So here we can just continue developing bishop to e3. We bring the bishop to this diagonal. And here we get a slight advantage. Just to give a sample line, we can continue developing with knight to f3. Queen to f3 is an idea, but knight to f3 is also a good move. And after bishop to e7, we castle if black castles. Then here we could play rook to e1. We're gonna get the e5 square for the knight, most likely. And overall we have better control of the center and more active pieces. And the other option, if black doesn't go for knight to f6, is to go c5. And here we can definitely continue with knight to f3, but even here d5 is a very interesting idea in order to lock this bishop. Again, we want to play against this bishop. So here d5 is an interesting move. For example, if black captures, then we capture with the pawn. And in these positions, we also have a slight advantage. Since the bishop on b7 is not very well placed, we're normally going to castle quickly. We also have a slight space advantage. So d5 is a very interesting move in this position. In any case, after e6 and a3, black normally first plays knight to f6 before trying to counterattack on the center. And here we're going to play the move bishop to d3, defending the pawn e4. And now black will again try either c5 or d5. If black continues with a move like bishop to e7, just allowing us to keep this very strong center, then we're just going to continue developing, and sooner or later black will have to do something. For example, here if black castles short, then after e5, we already get an advantage. For example, after knight to d5, we can trade. Black will normally take with the bishop, otherwise the bishop will be blocked by its own pawn. And here we have the move c4. We dominate the center, we attack the bishop. So this is not what black is looking for. So here black will normally counterattack, either with d5 or c5. So let's evaluate these alternatives. Here after d5, we could capture on d5, but black's idea is that now the knight can capture on d5. So here capturing on d5 would be less strong than in the other line. But here we could play e5. And if the knight goes to e4 or to d7, here we have this very interesting idea of going knight c to e2. So knight to e4 would actually be quite dubious because now black is having a lot of trouble keeping the knight there. f3 might come attacking the knight. So this is already a very bad position for black. And after d5 and e5, then knight f to d7 is better because now black is not having problems with the knight. And black might plan to counterattack on the center. That's why here I really like the move knight c to e2 with the idea to meet c5 with c3. And we also get a very good position, I think quite a good advanced variation, because black has played the bishop to b7 and the bishop here is actually not doing a lot, just hitting against d5. So this is also a very pleasant position for us. After knight c to e2, in the model game that I showed, black played the move bishop to a6, which is very logical, trying to exchange this passive bishop for this very active bishop. And here white could definitely trade on a6, white tried knight to f4, and after bishop takes, queen takes, c5, c3, queen to c8, and knight g to e2, white still gets an advantage. White has more space and more active pieces. Even though this might be playable for black, white still gets a slight edge. And the other main alternative is the move c5, which is even a bit more popular, and I think that it makes more sense if black wants to keep this bishop active, because d5 allows us to play e5 and close the position. So c5 is probably a more interesting try. In this position we already have very few games, and in the model game that I found, white played knight to f3, but I just want to mention that d5 here is again a very strong alternative, since here we are not losing a pawn after black captures on d5. Whenever black captures with the knight, then we have this very strong idea of queen to f3. So this pin is just very strong. For example, after knight takes, we take on b7 and we attack the rook and the pawn. So this is already winning material. So after d5, we also get quite a good position. But knight to f3 or even taking on c5 is possible. In the model game that I showed, white played knight to f3 and black captured on d4, and this reminds us of a Sicilian defense where the c and d pawn are traded. So overall it is fairly playable for black. But even after knight to c6, white got a very strong position. White traded on c6, and here even though black might capture with the d pawn, it makes sense to capture with the bishop. Otherwise white play bishop to b7, and in this position white can definitely castle short and get a good game. But white even played more aggressively and played bishop to f4 with the idea to castle long. So here black played d6 and white played queen to e2, which is normally a standard move in the Owens defense to defend e4, and additionally the rook on d1 after we castle long would be eyeing the queen. So after bishop to e7, white castle long. Black played knight to d7, which was probably not a very good move, since after bishop to b5, white is already getting a lot of pressure on black's position. d6 is a target. We are putting pressure on c6, so this position is already much better for white. Okay, so we now know how to play against the Owens defense. After e4, b6, we're gonna occupy the center with d4, and after bishop to b7, we're gonna play knight c3. Here black's main idea is e6, planning to go bishop to b4, which we can allow, but I suggest to go a3 in this position. And here black's most common continuation is going to be knight to f6, and here we're going to play bishop to d3, defending on e4. And if black plays standard moves, we're normally gonna get an advantage thanks to our better center. That's why black will normally try to counterattack on the center, either with c5 or d5. Against d5, we're gonna play e5, and then we have this strong idea of knight c to e2 in order to have c3 holding the center. And if black plays c5, we could play the natural knight to f3, which will normally lead to positions that are very similar to those that we reach in the Sicilian defense. Or we could also play the move d5 in order to limit black's bishop on b7.